Hi friends, host Eric here, host of Talking with Famous People, professional debate coach, logic teacher, and typologist. I'm going to try to bring these three together in a simple video that will explain NI and SI, hopefully in ways that everybody can understand. So first of all, SI and NI as concepts you might define as experiential knowledge versus intuitive knowledge. And what that means is basically that if you learn something because you remember how exactly you learned it, and you can point to occasions of actively learning it, then it's an SI kind of knowledge. Whereas if you can highlight the instance in which you understood something or became aware of something's identity, that would be an NI kind of knowledge. There's a lot more to it conceptually, but I don't want this to be a long video, so I'm going to move through this quickly. Now, extroverted intuition as a concept, you might describe as ideation, the creation of new possibilities, new ideas. It expresses behaviorally as talking a lot, and in the INTP, which I am, it expresses behaviorally as talking a lot, usually in big words. Now in this instance, I want to give an example of extroverted intuition in a straight up creative sense. So once upon a time, there was a crab who had a bottle of butane. And the reason he had this bottle of butane is because he was trying to return to the sea where his lighter had run out of fluid. And the reason he had a lighter in under the sea was because he had found a pocket of air under there in which he could go and smoke. And prior to that, he had been unable to smoke because he was under the water most of the time and it was very wet. Now, in this instance, I'm looking in front of me. I see my crab piggy bank. It says Baltimore on it. And I saw this. And I built a story accordingly. Now, the rest of the stuff that made up the elements of the story, and I did not plan that ahead of time or anything, impact upon understanding of concept. So my example now impacts our concept dramatically. It's an example that reveals a relationship with extroverted sensing. I began my story by looking for things out in the world that I could use as building blocks, right? And it impacts upon my understanding of my relationship with SI. So in that instance, I didn't use a memory instead. If I were to build a story off of a memory, I would say, once upon a time, there was a guy who was driving down the street with his wife, and she said, can we get whippets? Okay, so this is based on a memory I'm having of a conversation Rachel and I had in the car. Usually it's me talking, so it was hard for me to come up with an example of she said. Instead, though, I used SE as a starting spot for this story. I didn't link back to something that happened to me before. Now, if I'd wanted to build a story off of that, then I would have had the basics of NI that I can work with. And so what happened here with the crab, let's go back to the original example, which is the crab and the butane. I then used NI slash a little bit of TI, I guess, to get other elements from the story. I know what a bottle of butane is used for. It's used to fill up lighters. So naturally the crab must have a lighter. And I know what having a lighter is for smoking. So he must want to smoke. And in order to smoke, you can't smoke under the water, so he must have found a pocket of air, right? So you would call that mostly my relationship between N, E, and NI there. You could say it's a TI thing because each of those is logically supported. But that's indicative of how my tool function frames NI. I do have TI as a tool function, so I'm likely to require of the story to have some consistency with reality. Nevertheless, those implicit qualities of those things that are implicit to having a lighter, right? That's an NI conclusion. You have a lighter, you must smoke. Maybe not. Maybe you're a pyromaniac. But NI is going to give you the obvious thing. Okay, so then it shows the relationship between SE and SI as well in this regard, which is it's one or the other. I could do both, but it would be in succession, not at the same time. In other words, they're exclusive as starting spots for a given idea. If I'm doing one, I'm not doing the other, right? So in that regard, they're binary and inversely proportional, which is to say exclusive. And it shows the relationship between SI and NE as well, which is NE can use SI and doesn't have to. Okay, now let's talk about object permanence and shape constancy. So what is this all sort of sourced in? If we were going to point to the ultimate proto form of these things, we'd talk about something that babies develop not instantly. So every living human being has sufficient capacity to introvertedly sense that they have some idea of object permanence. It's minimally the case with people who have SI polar. But what it means to have object permanence is to leave something someplace and not be surprised when you come back and find it there. Okay? Well, this thing appeared magically again out of nowhere in the same place. What the hell? When babies are surprised by peekaboo, they haven't developed object permanence yet. Shape constancy, on the other hand, is our intuition about identities. So I might show this to you this way, this way, this way, this way, right? If as beings we had to use only SI, we would have to know to recognize this only after we've seen it from every imaginable possible perspective. Since there are infinite possible tiny variations within perspectives, between viewing perspectives, then we'd never really be sure what anything was, right? So we have to have intuition that says, I can fill in the blanks and know what that is. Even if I see it from a little bit of an angle, I get the various clues it has about its identity will be sufficient to reveal those identities to me. Now, nevertheless, it is the case that if I were to put this exactly the right way, you might not know what that is. You still might. You might recognize that as the bottom of a lighter, But regardless, shape constancy links to introverted intuition and object permanence links to introverted sensing because shape constancy is about the identity of the thing itself, whereas object permanence is about your relationship to the thing. And so too with its relationship to extroverted intuition. Since I'm an extroverted intuitor, my relationship to ideas is one of object permanence, which is to say I have introverted sensing as my conscious knowledge function. I treat arguments and such as though they are permanently on the flow and as though progress is being made, even though this is only from my own perspective because it may be the case that some people are paying enough attention to what I'm saying to be keeping track of the arguments, but there's absolutely no reason to presume that, right? Anyhow, I hope this was revelatory about... I hope this makes you feel like you understand these concepts better. And if you'd like to be typed by me, I cost $100. I've not been looking at my email for the last 3 or 4 days, so I'll do it today. I'll get to my email today. Okay, so and when in doubt, call me. I'm just probably being avoidant and lazy, and I'm more likely to answer the phone than I am to do anything else.